Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all and welcome to the channel. This is a new series that I wish to create to help those, well, I do not wish to say help in case the videos that or the content of the videos does not prove to be helpful, but to share my opinions, perspectives, and ideas regarding world building and storytelling. Though you may see some of these ideas exude onto other playlists, such as the playlist I have for the Warcraft 3 analytical videos. I simply need extra time to start recording the second episode. Fortunately, I do not have enough time. But this video is, or rather, this playlist is separated from that playlist mainly because the other playlist is meant to raise awareness to the manipulation and indoctrination embedded within different forms of media. Not necessarily Warcraft 3, for example, but Warcraft 3 does promote certain outlooks that may ruin communities. If you look at, for example, what was his name, Smokey the Bear, when he was first released, even though it was a cartoon, it helped mitigate the issues related to forest fires, for example. This could be seen as a form of manipulation or indoctrination, though a beneficial one. But the cartoon was used to manipulate the perspectives or the outlooks of communities. The same approach, or rather, the same could be said about different forms of media, such as anime, video games, and so on and so forth. A good example of that would be the portrayal of Muslims in militaristic shooters, such as Call of Duty. Muslims are always portrayed as stupid cannon fodder or sheep that merely rush onto the screen without any strategy or any magnificent weapons, as opposed to the protagonist who is always strategic and powerful with different weapon loadouts. So that instills a certain viewpoint towards Muslims within the Western community who play these games. That is the point. That is the purpose of the analytical videos or the analytical playlist I have dedicated to such videos or media, to be precise. This playlist is dedicated towards people who enjoy writing, rhetoric, or preparing tabletop role-playing sessions for their worlds or their games, even if they are set in the world of Dungeons and Dragons, for example. They can obviously change and modify the rules slightly. This video or these series of videos are my own opinions, so if you wish to appeal to me as a reader or as a participant in your tabletop role-playing session, this is what you must have in your world. I am not saying this so that you appeal to me, you do not have to, obviously, but it is aimed to help inspire you with how to create your world, because I always see people struggling to host, for example, Dungeons and Dragons sessions because of the lack of today's topic, which is the origin of the world and the laws of the world. I also see novels suffer from this, even though they are written by experienced writers, but because fantasy or scientific fiction is viewed in a particular outlook, people tend to ignore these and focus solely on creating a fantastical story rather than creating a grounded or realistic story. So that is what this playlist is dedicated towards. Hopefully it helps you If not, you did not lose anything except time, and time is the most essential resource you have. So hopefully it does not waste your time. Though I highly doubt people watch my videos anyways. Okay, so let us start with defining the origin of the world. What exactly do I mean by the origin of the world? There we go. You must have uh, oh, you must have the story of the creation of the world written. Now remember, you may not portray or depict what I am about to list in your novel or in your tabletop role-playing setting, but you must have it planned before writing your novel or before you start hosting your tabletop role-playing sessions. These two precede even the creation of the map. That is how important it is. Hopefully, you will empathize once you finish watching this video. You may disagree with me, but from my perspective, these two are the most essential aspects of your world and of the narration. You must plan the creation of the world. How was the world created? Was it created by a single creator? Was it created by multiple creators? And so on and so forth. You must have that set. Whichever option is obviously up to you. However, my recommendation to you would be ignoring the fantastical elements and focusing on the realistic elements. For example, if you take a look at the magical system in Harry Potter, for example. In Harry Potter, the world of Harry Potter, or the world of the witches and wizards, is completely fantastical to the point where it becomes too surreal for people to actually live in. How so? You can cast a spell in the world of Harry Potter that controls the actions of an individual, or that can brainwash an individual. Now you may say these are forbidden by the wizarding police. I do not remember if they were actually called police, honestly. But in reality, who will know that you cast these curses or these forbidden spells? No one really. So realistically speaking, arrests cannot be expected. So when you are creating a world, ignore the fantastical elements. And by ignore, I mean do not focus solely on creating a fantastical setting. Create a fantastical setting that is grounded in reality. So if you wish to create spells similar to Harry Potter, you need, what is the word? Control over these spells. You cannot expect people to live in the wizarding world and have their actions or thoughts controlled by someone else. No one would want to live in such a world. You can have a fantastical element where people can cast fireballs, for example, or lightning bolts, or any other elemental attack. But you cannot expect people to live in a world where their thoughts could be manipulated or their actions could be manipulated. Obviously, there are good people and bad people in any society or any culture. So you should try to create your world with realism in mind. Do not create it to be too fantastical. Avoid the extremes. Keep it grounded in reality. You can add fantastical elements such as mythical creatures, for example, but keep the world grounded in realism. So when you concoct the story, behind the creation of the world, keep it grounded in reality. A good example to this would be the creation of the Lord of the Rings world. Now, I should note as a disclaimer that any critique directed towards any form of media in this video is not targeted towards the creator of that world. It is directed towards the world itself. So if I am analyzing Lord of the Rings now, I am not targeting the author. What was his name again? Tolkien, I forget. I am not targeting the author directly. I am targeting his world. So the lore he created is the topic of my criticism, not the author. I do not know the person. I do not know if he is good or bad. Thus, he is not part of the equation. I am targeting the lore itself, the dynamics and the mechanics of the world itself. Now, if we take a look at the creation of the Lord of the Rings world as an example, you will see that there was a sole creator, forgot his name, Eonar, if I recall, or Eo. I honestly do not remember the name. So from what I recall, I could be mistaken. He created an angelic race of beings, the Valar or the Manar, the ones where Gandalf, Sauron, and Morgoth are from. Honestly, I do not remember. There are two races of these angelic beings, greater ones and lesser ones. The lesser ones include Sauron and Gandalf. The greater ones include Morgoth. I believe that is the case. I could be mistaken. Regardless of that, the issue is this. If the creator created these angelic beings, why did he rely on these angelic beings to create the world of Lord of the Rings? If he created these angelic beings, he is also capable of creating the world by himself. That is what I refer to as grounding the world in reality. Instead of focusing on the fantastical element, that he created the world alongside angelic beings that he also created. It is slightly nonsensical. So you have to plan the creation of the world. Most of the time, if not always, you will find, at least from what I have seen and read, whether people believe in Darwinism or not, the world always starts with a creator, a single creator. And that matches the instincts that we were created with in our real world, that is. We are created with the instinctual attraction or belief towards the presence of a powerful being that created everything. Whether people deviate from these instincts or not, that is a different story, and that is why religions exist. But you will always find, at least from my experience, you will always find that the world was created by a creator. Then life either continued through evolution or continued through other means. But you will always find a sole creator for the world. There are exceptions, obviously, such as Mass Effect, for example. I do not believe they ever mention a creator. It is always a wave of evolutions from millennia to millennia and so on and so forth. But from what I have seen, most if not all forms of narration involve a creator of the world. Obviously, it is left to you, but my advice to you would be to ground your world in reality as opposed to focusing on the fantastical portion too much. It creates a surreal world where people cannot possibly live in. Even if they do enjoy it, they will, for a tabletop role-playing setting, for example, they will not enjoy it consistently. If a a dragon the size of a mountain keeps raiding a village, no one would want to live anywhere in your world because that dragon can raid other villages or raid other countries. Just as an example. So, the origin of the world is basically the creation of the world. Another point I would like to add would be evolution of races. Here I do not refer to Darwinism or macroevolution, where lizards transform into lizard men, or what was it in Warcraft, the World of Warcraft? Uh, I believe there were some sort of stone, rocky constructs that evolved into dwarves. The rather strange form of evolution there. What I refer to is microevolution, which is actually a realistic form of evolution. If you look at the different ethnicities of the world, you have the Caucasians, the Hispanics, the Africans, the Arabians, and so on and so forth, and the Oriental. They have differences in physical characteristics. For example, the Caucasians are characterized by pale skin. Why? Because they live in areas that are cooler, and most of the time the sun is not visible because it is normally cloudy. So their skin color matches their environment, which is a form of microevolution. Africans, on the other hand, have a high percentage of melanin, which is the skin pigment. Thus, they have the darkest skin. Why? Because they are constantly exposed to higher temperatures and to the sun. So their skin color matches their environment, another form of microevolution. If you look at the facial structure of Oriental races such as Japanese, Chinese, or Korean, you will see that their eyes have a particular shape which matches their environment, most likely because of the humidity. Possibly, that is my conjecture. I have not studied the relationship between the facial structure of Oriental people with respect to their environment, but I am certain there is a relationship. What is the nature of that relationship is unknown to me. Now, if you wish to create multiple races other than humans, feel free to do so, but plan their evolution. For example, in our real world, humans used to be much taller and they lived longer. So you can say during the time of Prophet Nuh or Prophet Noah, peace be upon him, people lived for centuries. Prophet Noah, peace be upon him, for example, was a prophet, or he was revealing the message of God to his people for 950 years. That is almost 1 millennium. Now also remember that the 950 years was the period where he was a prophet. We do not know how many years it took for him to grow until he became a prophet. It could have been another 900 years. We cannot tell for certain. And how much longer did he live after the great flood? We do not know that either. So people used to live longer and they were much taller. That is why the magical city, and I say magical to portray its fantastical nature, as mentioned in the Quran, التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد. No such city existed at the time of Iram. It was a city of wonders. So that is what I refer to by magical. I do not mean the actual aspect of magic. The city of Iram was known as Iram of the Pillars. How did the people back then create or erect such wondrous pillars? Because they were gigantic. So they were stronger back then compared to now. As time progressed, people started to grow shorter until our own height in this current era and live shorter as well, till roughly between 60 to 90, sometimes 100. So you have to plot this as well. And remember to ground it in reality again. How so? I will give you an example. If you look at Dragon Age, for example, or Lord of the Rings, both have the stereotypical form of the elven races where they live longer, and Dungeons and Dragons as well. They live longer. I do not have an issue with that. Here is where the issue lies. How can you have elves that live longer and humans who live much shorter lives within the same world? That is nonsensical. How so? It is nonsensical because, in terms of reproduction, or hybrids, if you wish to call them that, between elves and humans, these offspring would live in the time of one parent and become automatically orphaned for another parent because humans live much shorter lives than elves. That means that all of these offsprings will be orphans. That is quite depressive when you have children that will become orphaned at a particular time simply because they outlive their parents. Unless you want for that aspect in your world, that is a different story, but realistically speaking, all races should have the same, not same, similar lifespan. So elves, for example, could live up to 100 years in your world, while humans could live up to 90 or 80 years roughly on average. Some may break these averages, obviously, you will always have outliers, but it would be realistic if you have multiple races that have the same lifespan. Another issue with existing or contemporary forms of media would be the height. You have humans who are roughly 6 feet tall, and you have the dwarves who are 3 feet, half of that roughly, possibly. The issue would be the aspect of reproduction or the aspect of marriage and love. Having a man that is half the height of the woman, or vice versa, which is technically the correct pronunciation, considering the letter E in Latin. But having that is highly unrealistic, especially if the couple is romantic and they cannot reach one another. It causes issues. Some people may find that humorous, but realistically speaking, it would not be humorous, especially since people will mock the shorter spouse. Definitely, they will mock the shorter spouse. So again, having that form of evolution where the races are roughly the same height would be realistic while adhering to the fantastical element in the sense that other races exist. So you could have the elven race to be higher than humans by a head or 2 heads, for example. That is a realistic proportion. In addition to the fact that gnomes, hobbits, halflings, or whatever they are called, or dwarfs, should not be called races because they are humans but shorter. A race should be much different, fantastically speaking, should be much different than humans. Even orcs, for example, if you look at the orcs in World of Warcraft or Warcraft 3, they are basically green elves. Why are they a different race? And elves have differences in the physical features, so they can be qualified as a different race because of the sagitted ears. But dwarves are exactly the same as humans, they are merely shorter. But if they appear physically the same, they should not be qualified as a different race. That is my perspective, obviously. Your world can have the gnomes, the hobbits, the halflings, or whatever they are called if you want. As I said, these are merely opinions and ideas pertaining to my own. And that is it for the origin. And remember, macroevolution does not exist in reality, otherwise it would not be called the theory of evolution, it would be called the fact of evolution. And as a scientist, I can tell you with complete certainty that macroevolution is impossible. A species cannot transform into another species. If that was the case, lions would never miss a prey because they would evolve into better beings or faster beings that can actually catch their prey. Some lions die of starvation. Why? Because they did not evolve. Thus, evolution does not exist. And if we did evolve from monkeys or chimpanzees, why are there monkeys and chimpanzees? All of them should have transformed into humans. And if there is evolution, macroevolution or Darwinism, why do we have the need to give birth to babies or to reproduce? We should simply evolve into other beings, and that is it. Anyways, that debate is a tale for another time. The next point on the agenda would be the laws. And I find that to be more important than the origin, because some people plan the origin but completely ignore the laws. And we will see how in just a moment. I need to remove the underline. There we go. Everything in the world must have rules, laws, dynamics, and mechanics that must be obeyed. What is the issue with the lack of rules or laws within the world? I will give you an example from a debate or an argument. It was a debate, actually, not an argument, that I engaged in long ago. And that was the use of magic in Dungeons and Dragons. Hopefully this will elaborate and clarify the definition of laws. A person was telling me about a session that he hosted for a group of friends. They were not his friends, they were a group of friends that he managed to recruit as a whole. They were in a session, and one of the people in the group was playing as a sorcerer or as a wizard, as a spellcaster, regardless of the class, it does not truly matter. And he created or cast vines, magical vines that were able to grow within a body of water. Specifically, the vines were submerged. His tactic was that he wished to light the vines on fire to turn the body of water, at least superficially, on fire. That way the enemies could not proceed, or he would be able to trap the enemies, or something similar to that scenario. Now he wished to light the vines that were submerged underwater on fire. The host's argument and ratiocination was that the vines are submerged, thus the fire cannot be lit, or it can be lit for a few microseconds and then extinguished immediately. The player's ratiocination was that it is a magical fire, and they started arguing about the validity of the tactic, that the fire can actually be lit and the entire body of water would be lit ablaze. The player argued that the fire is magical and thus can break the laws of physics in the real world and light the vine on fire. The host's perspective was that the fire's genesis or creation was magical, but the fire itself was realistic. The generation of the fire was magical, but the fire itself was not magical. Ultimately, that was the point where the person became exhausted from the argument and he took his group and left the host, and that is where his campaign ended. The issue here, and I will not discuss the personalities of the debate, I am discussing the topic of the debate, which was the magic of Dungeons and Dragons. The magic of Dungeons and Dragons does not obey any rules or laws. Most of it is left to the discretion of the host and or to the arguments of the party members. Some of it, yes, is explicitly stated, but most of it, which is why the magical system in Dungeons and Dragons is stupid, most of it is left ambiguous and vague, and that is why people tend to abuse such ambiguity to enforce their stratagem. And that is why it is stupid, because it leads to conflict, even though it should not, obviously, but ultimately it does, because people's reasoning is always lol magic. It is not lol magic. Magic has rules, has laws, has mechanics, has dynamics. There is a reason why you are able to cast fire, cast wind, cast water, and so on and so forth. In our reality, for example, magic does exist and it has laws. If you wish to use magic, you need to summon a devil through particular incantations. The reason I know this is because if you wish to fight an enemy, you must know the enemy and understand the enemy. That is why we know of magic in Islam, so that we can combat that enemy. It is not we know magic so that we can use it. Magic is forbidden in Islam, but in everything else it is permitted, and you can see this through the increasingly popular phenomenon known as the New Age movement, where people believe in astrology, tarot cards, worshipping crystals and angels, and so on and so forth. So the laws of magic in reality must enforce the summoning of a devil through particular incantations, worshipping that devil, obeying that devil, and then the devil grants the summoner his or her abilities after certain agreements or pacts. That is the law of magic. It must be obeyed, it cannot be broken. Similarly, in your world, if you have aspects of the universe such as magnetism, gravity, and so on and so forth, they must obey a law. So that if that law is broken, you have a justification for it. An example would be, let us see, let us take Harry Potter for example. They have the law that the wand chooses the wizard. No problem. Why? Is the wand sentient? Is the wand sapient? Is the wand a living creature? Or is the magic that flows within the wand a living creature? If the wand is a living creature, how is it a living creature when it was created from material that is inanimate or non-living? These questions are never answered. It is simply to appear fantastical and cryptic. The one chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. I honestly do not remember the accent, or I would have mimicked it rather accurately, or tried to mimic it accurately. Now, Mr. Potter never questioned why the wand chooses the wizard. Why do wands choose evil beings in Harry Potter, such as Voldemort? Are these wands evil? Do they understand evil? We do not know. And I highly doubt it was explained in the books. If they were, please feel free to explain it or share the information in the comments below. But I am 100% certain that this law was never explained in the books. Why? Because people do not know what magic is. Thus, they try to be vague about it because they do not know how to actually create laws for it. So it is simply, oh, magic exists, lol. We will teach you at Hogwarts how to use it with certain incantations, and that is it. Another issue where the law of magic is broken, or rather it is never explained, would be the selection of the wizard or the witch. When a person is born, how are they deemed witches, wizards, or muggles? Muggles, if anyone is unaware, are the people that are unable to cast magic. How are they born with that gift? We do not know. Is the magic some sort of priest or rabbi that blesses a child when they are born? We do not know. It simply is. It exists. Why does it exist? How does it exist? These questions are never answered. The reason you should focus on these laws is, firstly, it creates immersion. Secondly, it creates consistency. That way, if the law is obeyed by a particular deity in your world, it will also be obeyed by the simplest of peasants in the world, because it is a law that cannot be broken. And if it is broken, or if there is an exception, because you have the dynamic and the mechanics set, you would be able to justify the exception as well. Your answer would not simply be lol magic or lol plot hole. I remember someone actually used that in an argument. Lol plot hole. That is rather stupid. That is that is moronic, to say the least. You cannot simply justify the existence of an event by simply saying lol plot hole, because then you can break any rule as you see fit, and your justification would be lol plot hole or lol magic. No, there must be rules that must be obeyed, and if they are broken, there needs to be a justification why they are broken. The scenario I mentioned regarding the vines and the magical fire may not have arose in your scenario, whether it is in a novel or in a tabletop role-playing setting, but if you do not have these laws set, the issue will arise sooner or later, and if it does arise, most likely, if not, it is highly likely that the issue that I mentioned will be repeated, because there is no consistency. That is the problem. If the laws are defined from the beginning, then they will remain consistent throughout your novel, throughout your story, or throughout your tabletop role-playing campaign. Now, if you are designing magic, it must be part of the origin. Who created magic? Why was magic created? And so on and so forth. And now that it has been created, what are the rules of magic? Who can use it? Why can he use it? And how can he use it? You must answer these questions before you move on to creating your map, and after that creating your story, plot, premise, and characters. Another example would be the magical system in D&D in general. Why do you have prestidigitation, which basically is able to to transform sand into a delicious meal if you eat it, because it gives you the illusion that it tastes delicious even though it is still sand. What is the point of this spell other than creating a fantastical and ridiculous spell? Nothing. The reason this is ridiculous is because why do you have the survival skill when everything can be possibly solved by prestidigitation? There is no need for the survival skill anymore. You do not need to hunt, you do not need to forage, you do not need to gather. If you wish to dry your clothes if they are wet, prestidigitation, there you go. If you wish to eat something rotten but try to enjoy it, prestidigitation, and so on and so forth. It is a stupid spell. But I feel the intention behind it, I could be mistaken, but I feel the intention behind these spells would be to create a fantastical and magical system without grounding it in reality. Thus, the survival skill is rendered redundant. There is no need for it because everything can be solved with prestidigitation. Just as an example, you may argue that if I play as a fighter that does not know how to cast spells, I would need prestidigitation. You will never find a fighter in a group that does not involve spellcasters. They will always have a spellcaster, and they will always cast prestidigitation and that, what was it called? Guidance, where guidance enhances your chances of succeeding at an act. Then what is the point of gaining experience, of learning a particular topic, of practicing a particular specialty, when all you need is guidance and that is it? All you need is luck. It defeats the purpose of having a skill or learning a skill, and so on and so forth. So these are just examples of why the laws must be obeyed. Returning to the example of Lord of the Rings, why did the creator, Eonor, I keep forgetting his name to be quite honest, why did he create the angelic beings and then rely on their help to create the entire world of Lord of the Rings? If he was able to create the angelic beings, why was he incapable of creating a planet or a universe? Again, it is nonsensical. Another example of the laws of the world would be, why was there a Dark Lord to begin with? What was his name? Morgoth, if I recall correctly. Why do these angelic beings have desires to begin with? If they lack desire, they would not need to be evil or rule the world or dominate or conquer anything, because they have no desire. And if they have that desire, what was the justification for it? I believe there was no justification. There may have been in the expanded lore. Honestly, I am unaware of it. And again, an issue with this dilemma is the fact that Morgoth arose to power of darkness by himself. If these angelic beings have desires, why are all of them benevolent except for only one? There should have been a group of malevolent beings and a group of benevolent beings. If desire exists, then both good and evil should exist. It should not be only one person. The same debate is extrapolated to the existence of the second one, Sauron, if I recall correctly. Why was he the only one of his race that was evil? And I honestly do not know the full story about Sauron. I do not remember it fully. But again, these laws must be defined. Another good example would be the angels in Darksiders, the video game. In Darksiders, romance between a male and a female and an angel is forbidden. If I recall correctly, I could be mistaken. And that is seen between, what was their names? Abaddon and Uriel in Darksiders 1. Why is it forbidden when that desire exists, that desire to be with someone, to marry someone, to reproduce with someone? If it exists, it should not be forbidden. Why is it forbidden for the angels but permitted for the humans? If it is forbidden, the angels should not have this feeling or this desire to begin with. They should be created without these humanly desires. But if they are created with these humanly desires, they should be able to consummate these desires. Why were they created with it and then forbidden to use it? It is nonsensical. We as humans were created with the desire to crave sexual intimacy, for example. So it should not be forbidden. But what is forbidden is how we use or direct that desire. Fornication is forbidden, marriage is permitted. Why is this system unavailable to the angels in Darksiders? The question remains unanswered. It is simply to add flavor to the conflict, but it is nonsensical. If Abaddon and Uriel loved each other, perhaps the events of the first game would not have, if they were able to consummate their love, the events of the first game may not have even occurred. But is it to deem the creator as an unfair God or an unjust God? If that is the case, then why did God create them with such a desire to begin with? If it is simply to say, oh, God is unfair, that is an agenda that is promoted. It is not a logical and sensical world. If you wish for people to view God as unfair, that is a different story. But to create a world where God is unfair, that is an agenda you are promoting. It is not a neutral viewpoint. But again, it depends on how you design your world. As I said, I am stating my own opinions, perspectives, and ideas that will hopefully help with the creation of your world and with your storytelling, either through novels or tabletop role-playing sessions or campaigns. That is it for this video. In the next video, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, and God willing, we will cover the creation of the map. I will not delve deeply into the scientific aspect of the creation of the map, though I will provide you with resources or videos that actually cover the scientific aspect. I will cover the scientific portion briefly and superficially so that you understand how land masses are formed. But if you wish to learn further, I found lovely videos online on YouTube that actually explain these scientific phenomena, so you can peruse that at your own leisure. That is it for this video. I hope this lecture was helpful and beneficial to you all. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Be safe, take care, and peace be upon you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.